It is now my honor to introduce the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. António Guterres. Mr. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Your Excellency Chancellor Merkel, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. We meet today to commemorate the 76th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp. We honor the memory of all the victims of the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews, and also the Roma and Sinti, people with disabilities, those of mixed descent, the LGBTQ community, Poles, Slavs, and all those who were persecuted and killed by the Nazis and their collaborators. Today's meeting takes place online under the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has already cost 2 million lives and sickened more than 90 million people around the world. The pandemic has put our societies to the test, revealing long-standing fractures and injustices. It has contributed to a resurgence in xenophobia and hate speech, including anti-Semitism, the oldest and most persistent form of racist and religious persecution. From Imperial Rome to medieval Europe and to the modern world, Jews and their communities have suffered 2 millennia of discrimination, attacks, expulsions, and periodic mass killings. Anti-Semitism found its most horrific expression in the Holocaust. The universal revulsion at this crime, followed by the founding of the United Nations and the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, promised an end. But it did not end. Indeed, today anti-Semitism is resurgent in many places around the world. As the number of Holocaust survivors diminishes every year, white supremacists and neo-Nazis intensify their efforts to deny, distort, and rewrite history, including of the Holocaust. In Europe, the United States, and elsewhere, white supremacists are organizing and recruiting across borders, shamelessly flaunting the symbols of the Nazis and their murderous ambitions. We saw shocking examples in this nation's capital in recent weeks. The COVID-19 pandemic has given them new opportunities to exploit social turmoil, turn people against each other, and target minorities based on religion, race, ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation, disability, and immigration status. After decades in the shadows, neo-Nazis and their ideas are gaining currency and even a kind of respectability. In some countries, their messages and ideology can be heard in some debates between mainstream political parties. In others, they have infiltrated police and state security services. Together, we must urgently strengthen our joint efforts against the danger they pose. Mesdames et messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, friends, this year our commemoration of the Holocaust has as its theme Facing the Aftermath, Recovery and Restitution After the Holocaust. For many Jews, the end of the Holocaust was only the beginning of an incredibly painful and arduous journey. No survivor of the Holocaust was ever able to carry on life as before. The Holocaust changed the world forever, making it impossible to go back. Today, as we are working to ensure that the world can recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we can learn important lessons from the Holocaust. We must address the weaknesses and shortcomings that the pandemic has exposed, and strengthen the bonds that unite us, which are based on our common humanity. 2021 must be the year of healing, healing from the pandemic, and healing our broken societies within which hatred has too easily taken root. To recover, we must invest in social cohesion, so that all communities feel valued in themselves and as part of a greater whole. Political, religious, and community leaders must seek common ground and must find consensus. Throughout the world, the United Nations strives to help governments build inclusive, diverse, and respectful societies based on human rights and the rule of law, guided by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We need coordinated global action, commensurate with the threat that we are facing, to unite to combat the rise and spread of neo-Nazism and white supremacy, and to tackle propaganda and disinformation. Over the last 15 years, our outreach program on the Holocaust has conveyed the accounts of Holocaust survivors to the entire world. our United Nations Plan of Action to safeguard religious sites proposes concrete measures to support governments so that all can exercise their right to observe their religious rituals in complete security. The UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech underscores our commitment to work together to combat this scourge.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, the only way out of the COVID-19 pandemic is through science and fact-based analysis. The production of vaccines in record time is testimony to the power of science. But there is no vaccine for anti-Semitism and xenophobia. The most effective weapon remains the facts and the truth. The United Nations will continue to stand for the truth and against lies, bigotry, anti-Semitism and hatred. Our best tribute to those who died in the Holocaust is the creation of a world of equality, justice and dignity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General.